So you're probably wondering by now, where do we get started with this? In order to help you with the homework for this week, I want to show you some examples for how you can use the Meal and Snacks template provided in the Academy notebook for your own family. I'm going to share two different examples based off two different daily routines and likely developmental stages that a child is at. One of a school-aged child where no nap is included, and then after that, one for a younger child where a nap might be more a part of their daily routine. Your first step for the homework this week is to determine what you're working with. How many hours during the day is your child even awake for? You need to know when your child tends to wake up and when they tend to go to bed. If this is something that is not routine in your family, that can create some challenges with creating the rest of the routine. Assuming that for most of us, there is a window of time that our child tends to wake up and tends to go to bed, I'm going to be focusing on that for the purposes of this week's homework. For this child, I went ahead and said that they wake at 6:20 and they go to bed at 7:30. Just so you know what I'm basing this off of, this would be my own newly 6-year-old. She's in kindergarten, and so I'm sharing with you what her daily routine would be and how we work through it for her. The second child I'll be sharing with you is my 17-month-old and what his daily routine will be. So in case that helps to have some context of what schedules I'm arbitrarily pulling these from, I figured I would use a personal example to give some concrete examples of how this looks in real life. Now that I know when my child tends to wake up and go to bed, I can begin looking at some of our normal meal times. Again, this might be flexible and fluid depending on the day or just your openness to change your routine as needed, because there might not be one at all in place right now, depending on what your family's day-to-day looks like. For my daughter, I know that there are more set routine meal times based off of when she has to get out the door for kindergarten, when she eats at school, and when we tend to eat at home. So for this, with her waking up at 6:20, I know that she's going to get up, get dressed, and come downstairs for breakfast. At 6:30, I know is around the time that she will be eating breakfast since she has to leave for school around 6:50. I know that her lunchtime at school is at 10:05 and that we tend to shoot for dinner at home around 5:30. Noting these normal meal times can again provide some guideposts for the other eating opportunities throughout the day. From here, we want to begin to add in snacks as appropriate. As mentioned, we want to be providing children with eating opportunities every 2 to 3 hours. This again creates eating opportunities regularly and routinely throughout the day. It takes pressure off of the meals in the case that our child maybe chooses not to eat at a given meal, and it gives them age-appropriate windows that their bodies can biologically handle appropriate appetite and hunger for that extended period of time. So for my daughter, I know that, as mentioned, she eats breakfast at 6:30. Because she has an early lunch at school at 10:05, they do not do a mid-morning snack. I know that they do an afternoon snack at school, which tends to be around the 1 o'clock hour. I also know that when she gets home from school, she tends to be hungry. We normally are home by around 3 o'clock, so normally by around 3:30, I'm offering her another afternoon snack. So I'm adding these in as appropriate. She's not getting a morning snack because that's one of the rhythms and routines that they've established for her at school based off the classroom structure and routine. However, I know that they do give her a snack in the afternoon, but yet 2.5 hours later when she gets home, she's already ready for another eating opportunity. You can begin to see as you lay this out on the templates this week for your own family where extended windows happen between eating opportunities. My daughter has to go a little over that 2 to 3 hour range between breakfast and lunch. We're talking about the beginning of one meal to the beginning of the next meal. And so she has to go a little bit over 3 hours based off her school schedule. However, I know that in the afternoon, if I wasn't providing her an afternoon snack, she would be very hungry come dinner time and probably not able to wait that long. So by doing a second afternoon snack, it makes it a more successful eating opportunity for her at dinner because she has an appropriate level of appetite and she has an added snack for a second afternoon snack. We don't do a bedtime snack at our house because we tend to eat several times throughout the afternoon and evening hour. Again, I can adapt this as needed. However, I encourage you to not make too many adaptations to your routine until you've had the chance to actually make it a routine. Give your proposed meal and snack schedule or structure a little bit of practice and see how it goes for your family. Again, if your child's not used to having structured meal and snack times, it's going to take a week or two for them to begin to develop appetite regulation. After this point, if you continue to see some hiccup arise, such as some of those that we talked about before, you may need to create some adaptations, such as adding in a bedtime snack or adjusting the hours that meals or snacks are offered. However, I encourage you first to maintain some consistency in the routine and to try and promote that appetite regulation for your child so that you can begin to identify, is this not working and in need of an adaptation, or is this just an off day that maybe your child responded a certain way, in which case we don't want to be prematurely responsive to. Then as needed, you can begin to adapt the timing or density of meals and snacks as needed. Things like noting that my daughter's breakfast is at 6:30 and she goes about 3.5 hours until lunch indicates that I need to make sure she has a filling breakfast to help fuel her until she gets to lunch. Obviously, this can create challenges if your child's someone who doesn't eat breakfast. Again, you would need to adapt as needed for your child's unique feeding temperament and uniqueness in how they eat and when they prefer to eat. But this is something that might deem an adaptation in the density of what I'm offering at breakfast versus an afternoon snack at school or the afternoon snack before dinner. I'm less concerned about the density because I know that she's able to eat more frequently in those afternoon and evening hours. This is where, again, we become responsive to what our child or overall family's feeding needs are. This does not need to be a rigid structure that is set by time or bound to any rules of feeding. However, it's intended to help serve you and your family well. You do not have to serve this routine strictly in a way that does not help promote eating competence and appetite regulation. Going through the same steps, I'm going to share how this looks for a younger child who potentially still has a nap. This is the meal and snack structure that I would use for my 17-month-old son. And he tends to wake up at 7:30 and goes to bed at 7:15. I know that now, as he's consolidated from 2 to 1 nap, he tends to nap around noon. Again, some of these might be flexible, but they provide us some guideposts to work within for the meal and snack routine throughout the day. I know based off his unique feeding temperament and also just the length of time that spans over the night that he sleeps without having anything to eat, that he tends to wake up hungry. So we do breakfast immediately upon waking. I give him lunch before he goes down for a nap, and then we eat dinner around 5:30. So I'm noting these normal meal times based off what tends to work for our family as well as his feeding temperament. In addition to meals, I'm going to go ahead and add in snacks. Since he's 17-month-old, this might be something that's new if you have a child of a similar age range. Oftentimes between 9 to 12 months, we begin to include snacks depending on how many milk feedings our child might still be taking. Since my son no longer takes a bottle or any milk feedings throughout the day, we've consolidated all milk intake to meals and snacks now. I can begin to plug in snacks accordingly to help, again, promote that appetite regulation and to promote that there's an appropriate span of time of around 2 to 3 hours between each eating opportunity. So I add in here a morning snack based off what tends to work for our family, and an afternoon snack, which you can see is similar, as in the exact same as when my daughter gets home from school, we get home from the carpool line, and I'm able to feed my son as well. This has been a recent change for us as he's adopted 1 nap versus 2. So I need to give this some time and maintain consistency with our routine in order to see if it works for us or not. Giving this a little bit of time allows me to identify if this seems to be working for us. Again, this is not a rigid set of rules. It's allowed to be responsive to what our family and my unique child needs. Since, as mentioned, I'm giving examples from my specific family, I'm able to speak to some of the adaptations that I know we might need based off of my child's own appetite and thus the density of snack that's required to satisfy and sustain them between meals and snacks, as well as the timing that overall works for our family. Things like my daughter waking up earlier and getting off to school can impact the timing that my son might be eating based off either what time he wakes up or needs to eat. Things like if my husband weren't in town and we're traveling and I would need to take my daughter to school and we'd be in the carpool line, that might be shifting when when my son needs to get up to eat. Things like these are just real life, and routine is never going to be perfect. However, having some of this structure and routine can help give us as parents some sanity back into establishing when such eating opportunities are typically occurring for our family. So looking at each child's daily routine and trying to come up with a family-wide approach can be helpful. For me, I find that this is most helpful, and I give you a few different templates to use in the case that you need to do this for multiple children to begin to evaluate what is each child's unique daily routine. I may need to adapt dinner so that they can either eat together, or say if my daughter has an afternoon activity and doesn't get home until later and it's later than I want my son to be eating, I might be pushing her dinner back and keeping his the same, or I might choose that his needs to adapt as well. This can have a ripple effect on afternoon snacks and the like, but again, you can see how you are able to adapt timing or density based off what you need to help sustain your overall family's mealtime snack structure. Something to know in all of this is what weekdays and weekends look like. With a family of 3 children with 3 different school schedules and 3 different appetites, routines, and all the such, it can seem like a lot of planning up front. However, I know that by adapting and shifting our schedules and meal and snack routines on the weekends to allow for family meals, I'm creating new opportunities, which we'll talk more about in Module 3 through the family meal environment. Additionally, I know that I'm also helping promote less food fussiness in my children from as early of an age as possible. If meal and snack routine is not something that you've adopted and your child maybe is already 6, 8, or 10 years old, you're not too late to start adopting this. You can begin shifting successfully to help promote that they have a better appetite and food intake and range their diet, while also helping you to have a better sense of how to structure meal and snacks in a way that works for your whole family, particularly if you're adding new siblings to the mix or maybe recently have done so, and see where routine might help. So I encourage you to go through this exercise, print out the templates that are shared in the Academy Notebook so that you can begin to lay out what your family's meal and snack schedule might look like and how you can begin adapting it so that it works best for you and your family.